the way I think about the brain is that my thinking is more or less like a ball bearing on a flat surface.
Mm-hmm.
And the more fatigued I am, the more unbalanced that surface is. But assuming I've slept well and I'm hydrated and caffeinated and satisfied, I don't have some like basic need like having to go to the bathroom or gnawing hunger or need for a coffee. I'm like a ball bearing on a flat surface.
Right.
And that flat surface is relatively stable. Now, as I move into something like a discussion of this podcast or I'm reading something, the dimples start to form on that surface. And so that ball bearing can rest, but you can still nudge it out pretty easily. Right. But that as I go further and further into an activity, it becomes a trench, and that ball bearing sinks to the bottom of that trench. And Christoph Koch, who was here recently, said, the flow state that we all want so badly is where we actually forget about ourselves because we're so deeply in that state of doing. I think he's right. And I think that many people think that they have ADHD. Yeah. Many people think that they can't concentrate. I actually believe there are some people with clinically diagnosable ADHD, but that most people are just not allowing themselves a narrow enough set of sensory inputs and context to drop into that trench. And yet it's the thing that feels so good.
It does.
When we're in it and when we emerge from it, we're like, oh, like that's what we're supposed to do. Yeah. And so what you described in the classroom where your students can't even come up with a word unrelated to the conversation is one of these attractor states.
Yeah.
Where does that sit with you?
Yeah, I think that sounds good to me. And I think I too share an interest in like how to get myself into that flow state and what to do when I have sort of bottomed out in like one particular, I might be in flow and making good progress on something, and then I get stuck and I stop. And I find that changing my immediate environment is a good way to get out of that little rut. So, for example, if I'm working on a difficult piece of writing, I might get to the end of what I can achieve in one particular cafe. But if I go to another cafe, Now,
this is a very smart strategy. Actually, a neuroscientist whose work I really admire and I also really enjoy as a person is Marla Feller at UC Berkeley. And I think she was the one that told me that at scientific conferences, which can go on for 2 or 3 days, and sometimes the sessions are very long. You have morning, afternoon, evening sessions. It's a lot. It's a lot. Lots to pay attention to, a lot of sitting. She would move seats around
I do that too.
Around the auditorium because she swore that I think it was Marla. Marla, if it wasn't you, forgive me. But I think it was Marla. She would move seats so that she could always anchor her attention for each talk or set of talks, not necessarily, moving every moment, but every hour or so. I think this is absolutely right. And so I wonder whether or not some of these effects of binaural beats or other frequencies improving focus has to do with just needing to fill the auditory sensory space.
That could be.
Like if I work in my basement now. I've set up my basement as like the ideal work environment. No phones, no internet. Don't allow it. When I go down there, it's just me and my thoughts.
Yeah.
I do allow some music. But when I get down there, the first 10, 15 minutes are excruciating. Like you can hear every distracting thought. I can think of a million things that I would just pop to mind. Right. But after about 10, 15 minutes, that all fades away. And I can work down there for hours. Like no one can find me down there. I love it. Like I've had to create this physical space because nowadays there's just so much infiltration through devices. So I wonder, for some people, they think they can't focus, but that there's a sensory space that needs filling. Yeah,
they haven't figured out how they need to hack themselves.
There's some very interesting data coming out of Mark Desposito's lab.
Okay.
We've had him on the podcast before about dementia and ways to improve working memory, which seems to be more of a dopamine thing. But if you can augment acetylcholine, you can improve attention. It's just so clear. Like that these forebrain structures like nucleus basalis that are releasing acetylcholine, they're necessary but not sufficient to establish an attentional spotlight. The reason I was going to mention in this context is, the cortex is rich with the nerve endings of these acetylcholine releasing neurons. The colliculus has acetylcholine input, and it seems like any multi-sensory area of the brain where you need to integrate vision and sound and context and thinking and all this stuff and intention and action. You have norepinephrine to raise overall alertness in the brain and body. That seems to be its general function. Dopamine does many different things in different areas, as you know, but it seems like acetylcholine is the thing that really creates this ability for attentional spotlighting, that being able to anchor one's thoughts and actions towards a specific set of sensory combinations. And so when we talk about listening to music or not listening to music, or one particular space or another space that one works in, I think so much of it is trying to, we're trying to create these spheres of attention that are very compact. And I don't think that people really appreciate just how hard that problem becomes when you take a device. I'm not anti-phones, and you're bringing in another sphere of 25,000 different spheres of attention that you can scroll through. It makes perfect sense why we wouldn't be able to focus, because acetylcholine is like a resource that we spend out and it can be replenished in sleep. You said you'll hit a flow state or a focus state, and then we have to switch, or you hit a wall. And I feel like it's a currency. It's not something that we should be able to just use, infinitum.
So I think a theme of some of your podcast episodes involves, physical exercise and workouts and, what's the best routine for this, that, or the other aspect of the workout. And generally interval training, I think, comes up as a pretty effective strategy. I sometimes think about that in the context of more mental work, because I have not had good luck screening out all the distractions to get going on deep writing. For me, it's more like I can push out a sentence and that's so effortful that then I need to take a break.
Oh, well, I feel much better now, because, I think this is where you're going. You may find comfort in the fact that we've had some just phenomenal physical coaches on here. I mean, people are degreed in physiology and teach super high-level athletes. And more than one of them has said that the attention span of the athlete in terms of ability to focus on cognitive information, tutorial and learning, even conversation, directly maps onto the duration of their event. Like the sprinters can pay attention for about the duration of their sprint.
About 10 seconds? Okay.
Yeah. For the 100-meter, right? But they can repeat that. Because the sprinter will sprint and then walk and then repeat. Right?
Exactly.
So it's entrainment.
So it's like I'll write a sentence, then I'll check one news site, then I'll write another sentence, and I'll check another news site.
Love it.
And if I try to just write one sentence and then another sentence and then another sentence, I get frustrated with myself. It seems like I don't know, I can't necessarily do it. Sometimes I can, but I've let go of working efficiently as a goal in and of itself.
Was it always the case, or do you think the advent of phones has made it such that you have this sort of step function?
No, I've always had a problem with the internet. The phone is just the way in. Yeah. But the phone actually can be helpful to me because I can close all the tabs on my laptop and just have my phone be the way that I access the internet, for example. And that allows for like a kind of a mental and physical separation where I can kind of be like, okay, now I'm doing this. Okay, now I'm doing that, and keep them kind of separated.
So you're really an interval athlete when it comes to mental work.
With the hard stuff. With the easy stuff, I can just do it, right? But it's this sense of effortful cognition that takes its own time, and it just takes its time. And I don't control that. I do try to set myself up to allow the mental work to happen when I'm in the shower or in the car or whatever. So, for example, if I'm going to work on a grant application with somebody and we're sharing, the writing, and I know I can't start until I've had a conversation with the collaborator about who's doing what and what we think this grant is going to be about, I might let that, set up that meeting when there's going to be downtime afterwards. I did this just yesterday. I had a meeting yesterday morning, knowing that then I was going to be on an airplane for quite a while, knowing that without my having to do anything about it, the ideas are going to marinate. Stuff is going to be happening that I'm not aware of. And that when I come out of that, I'll probably know what I want, at least the first couple of sentences to say.
Yeah, you trust the sort of the process of a brain state shifting back and forth. You don't fight it. You trust it.
Yeah, I have to. I mean, I don't see any other way to do it. But I think it's a little like, you need rest and recovery for physical exercise. And honestly, it's not like the brain and muscles are all that different from each other, right?
Well, I always think of all nerve action as motor. And we could talk about that. I mean, Sherrington said, right, the final common path, the Nobel Prize winner Sherrington, the final common path is movement. I mean, that's what we evolved to do first. And thinking is a form of movement. It is hard for people to grasp sometimes.
Right.
But, and people perhaps can grasp it more easily in the context of songs. Certain songs sound like they're moving forward. Like it feels like a physical progression. They make you want to move, right? They actually inspire movement. Actually, there are very few sounds that inspire stillness. They tend to be the, slow oscillatory sounds, ocean waves, things that don't have a structure.
Right.
They're very fractal, and but like to the point where you don't see that fractal structure, and it just kind of breaks up, and then your mind just goes into drift. The only other person I've ever met who has described embracing their mental process the same way that you have is my good friend and he's this like world-renowned producer, Rick Rubin, who he just trusts that there are certain times a day when things are going to come to him that certain things aren't ready and they just need to marinate in sleep or in dreams, and doesn't even really try to assign it to sleep and dreams. He just understands the process. It eventually is going to emerge. He's not like, why can't I get this thing out? And so he's very, very much in flow with his own, peaks and valleys and attention.
Being blocked can mean you don't know yet what needs to come next.